I'm Michelle del Castillo Davis, and I am Lois del Castillo's daughter. She is the founder of Sunshine Haven. Lois came to the Rio Grande Valley in the mid-1950s. She went to school in New Rochelle, New York, which is just north of New York City, and that's where she became a licensed nurse. She continued her education down here in the 50s and 60s, but she had the experience of being on the farm and tending to animals. She was always a nurse. She worked at Mercy Hospital as an emergency room nurse, and shortly after that, Dr. DeStefano realized her talents and she became his office staff nurse. After his sudden passing, she worked for BISD as a school nurse. In addition to that, she went on to be the house supervisor at Brownsville Medical Center. She was the night supervisor at Dolly Vincent Hospital in San Benito. And then she became the director of nurses at Valley Regional Hospital. Upon her retirement, she started to work for Heart of the Valley Hospice in San Benito, Texas. And it was a culmination of her life's work that she had the vision for Sunshine Haven. My mother was a person that was very pragmatic, and she understood processes. And the process of life means the process of death. And she was not afraid to confront that issue. And I think that she wanted to make it the best experience possible. I know that her profound experiences in the hospital setting, where they had set hours, that visiting hours, and people would have to go, and she would know that if they had a dying family member, that it would break her heart to say, okay, visiting time is up at 8, you can come at 8 a.m. the next morning. And that broke her heart. And she also just felt that it was time to have a place, like I said, God put it on her heart to form a place where families could be together as they transition, as their family member passes on. My mother was extremely knowledgeable. She was a go-to person. Many people counted on her knowledge, and she was such a fantastic person because she empowered other people, whether they were male or female. In the age of female administrators in the 70s, female administrators were a new thing, and sometimes she had to buck the establishment, but she was always advocating for people. She had the wonderful gift of recognizing talent in somebody and nurturing that talent and empowering people to be the best that they could actually be. Sunshine Haven was years in the making. My mother convinced a lot of people in the community to back her vision. It was a long road. It just didn't happen overnight. And her tenacity to get people behind her, so many people in the Brownsville community, the Harlingen community, and in the entire valley backed the project. And she did have her trials and tribulations with it, but 20 years later, Sunshine Haven exists. It's a wonderful facility. It's a wonderful place for families to come and help their loved ones transition in compassionate care. Over the lifetime of my mother's nursing career, my perception is that she helped a tremendous number of professionals. Our dinner table always had someone there after work. She would have somebody come over, and they had many long talks about things. She was always an advocate for the nursing profession. I know that when she was nurse administrator, she often fought for better nurse pay. She fought for better working hours, better benefits. She also brought the first group of Filipino nurses to the Rio Grande Valley from New York. I went with her on that trip in the 70s, and we went to Times Square, and she met with nurses from the Philippines, and she brought the first nurses from the Philippines to Brownsville, Texas. And many of those nurses became dear friends, and over time she had so many colleagues that really looked up to her, respected her, and knew that she was working for the greater good of the nursing profession. And the same thing for Sunshine Haven. She was looking out for the greater good of patients and their families. The day I realized that my mom was a nurse, I was only about 5 years old. 5 or 6 years old, and there were 6 of us in the family, and my brother is 10 years older than I am, and they were all playing football in a field just 3 houses down from ours, and Riverside Boulevard runs right on that street, and he came running into the house. My mother and I were in the kitchen. I was about 5 or 6, and he came running into the kitchen, and he was screaming that his friend had been hit by a car. And she ran out into the street and got hit by a taxi. And that day I knew that my mother was actually something really special, because she looked at me, she said to stop, stay there. She directed my brothers and sisters that were in the house to get towels, and she took off. And I just remember being scared. I remember her running. But what I remember is a tremendous grace under pressure, because she knew what to do. And she arrived on the scene, and my brother's friend had a tremendous head wound. And she stabilized the situation in order for the ambulance to get there. And I remember Mom coming back in the door, and she was covered in blood. And that day I knew that she had a special quality about her. And the other thing that I remember was just the compassion, the knock on the door. She was still covered in blood, and the girl that got hit was the daughter of a police officer. And I remember he pulled up in his patrol unit in front of our house and gave my mother the heartiest hug ever. And that day I knew that her nursing skills saved somebody's life. So many families have come through Sunshine Haven stores. It's been 20 years. I would say a couple thousand families have benefited from the fruits of my mother's vision. God really did put Sunshine Haven on my mom's heart, and I would just like to thank you from the bottom of our